All right, are you ready? If you're walking by, come check us out. I'm going to share some information about CoSpaces Edu. Come grab a seat, take a load off, rest your feet. Let's learn about CoSpaces. So my name is Mike Fricano. About 3/4 of you know me already. I'm a CoSpaces Guru Ambassador. Yeah, come on in, have a seat. Got a couple seats here if you want to squeeze in. Got one here, one there. You good? Okay. So I'm a CoSpaces Guru Ambassador. I'm a teacher by day. I'm a K-6 educator at a K-12 private school. Use CoSpaces with a variety of subjects and grade levels. I'll share some of those examples in a few minutes. My presentation's available online, so if you want to write that down or take a picture of it, it'll be on every slide. But feel free to check that out. You can save it, share with your colleagues, and check it out later, because I'm sure you're being overloaded with information and you're not going to remember a single thing that I say once you step away from this booth. So check that out later on. It's bit.ly/CoSpaces2. There's also, most of my CoSpace projects are documented on that webpage as well. All the rubrics and planning guides and some student examples are there as well. So let's learn a little bit about CoSpaces Edu. So there's some requirements in order to use, to build and access and view CoSpaces. There's a couple ways you can create, which makes it very easily accessible. You can create with CoSpaces on a laptop, on a desktop computer. Many of you probably work in one-to-one Chromebook schools, works well on Chromebooks. So you can create and view your projects on a laptop or computer. But if you have tablets in your school, like iPads, like I do, it works well on an iPad as well. So you can create and view on iPad as well. And if you want to explore your CoSpace projects or explore others' projects, you can do that also on a computer or a tablet. For me, the most engaging and immersive way to explore CoSpaces is with a VR headset. So if you have a set of phones and VR goggles or iPod touches, it's a really fun way to explore CoSpaces, because you are fully immersed in that experience and you're free to explore those 3D projects that your students create. So to create CoSpaces, it's web-based first and foremost, so it works on a browser, which makes it even more amazing. So it's not tied to any one computer. You don't need to install some special application for your kids to create. They just have to have internet access, and they can visit the website and they can begin creating. So kids can create in class. They have access to a computer at home or in your library or in a community space. They can continue working and creating in that space from pretty much anywhere, as long as they have internet access. But you can also create on the tablet as well. So whatever device you have, it pretty much works with that device. And what I love most about CoSpaces is its ease of use. So it's at its simplest level, it's a drag and drop tool, right? So you're given a three-dimensional canvas to work with, and through a very extensive 3D object library, you simply drag those objects into your space, and you can begin to build your own 3D scenes. So very simple drag and drop. You can go to the next level, and you can do things like you can upload your own images. So I've seen lots of examples of teachers or students creating museums out of the pictures that they take themselves, and creating a three-dimensional museum that you can then virtually explore. If you do 3D printing in your school, or you use any kind of 3D design tool like Tinkercad or SketchUp or Onshape or any kind of CAD software, and your kids are creating 3D objects, they can take those 3D objects that they create and upload them into CoSpaces as well. So you're not just limited by the 3D object library that's in CoSpaces. If you're creating your own stuff, your own objects, those can be pulled in as well. And you can also upload your own 360 images to serve as a backdrop for your CoSpaces project. And you can also upload your own sound files. So think about, how can I get my students' voice to be a part of this experience? They can do that by recording themselves, creating maybe an MP3 sound file, and then you can upload that into your CoSpaces environment, and their voice can be a part of that three-dimensional scene as well. And it's very easy to share CoSpaces. So when they're done, every CoSpace project comes with its own unique web address, and that could very easily be linked up on your school website or your classroom website, or shared out via email with parents and community. And every project comes with its own QR code as well. So I see lots of great examples of teachers creating their own bulletin boards and then putting those QR codes on the wall. And through the CoSpaces app, you simply scan that QR code and it takes you right into that student's project. Makes it really easy to access other people's work. And there's a couple of ways that you can explore those projects as well. So there's 3D mode on a laptop or a desktop, where you use a combination of the arrow keys and your mouse to look in different directions and to move in different directions as well. If you're on a mobile device like a tablet or a phone, and your device has built-in gyroscope, then you can physically look in the direction that you want to move yourself in as you're exploring the CoSpaces project. And then, as I talked about earlier, VR mode using a mobile phone and a VR headset, which we've got examples of over here. So there's a couple different ways you can explore as well. If you don't have access to a VR headset and a mobile device, you're not limited to that. There's several different ways and several different devices you can use to explore your students' CoSpaces projects. And another thing I really love is the ability to code. So, think of Hour of Code, computer science. How can you get your students to experience computer science? They can do that through the built-in coding features in CoSpaces. So, again, at CoSpaces, at the very basic level, you're creating what I like to refer to as a static, sort of frozen in time scene where everything's sort of stuck in its place. But if you want to give those objects actions, if you want them to be able to move, to talk with each other, if you want your audience, your viewers, to be able to interact with the scene and do things based on what they're clicking on or what they're looking at, you can do that through the built-in coding tool. And there's several different ways that your students can code based on their levels and abilities and their grade levels. So they have a fairly new coding tool called CoBlocks, which is a simplified version of the Blockly coding language. If you're familiar with Scratch, it's very similar to that. So snapping blocks together to give objects and characters action within your scene. And that's new for both the web, and it's accessible on tablets as well if you have access to those. But if you have high school or middle school students or students that are a little bit more advanced in programming, they can also program in JavaScript and TypeScript. You could do some pretty complex and amazing things if they're able to program in those languages. And hopefully there will be more languages coming soon that will allow your students to be able to program their CoSpace projects. And another really great feature built in is a physics engine. So as you can see that example there, you can give your objects weight, which would make them fall. You can have things knock over into each other. You can have a ball roll down a ramp. So you can attach physical properties to objects within your scenes, like gravity, mass, friction, its bounciness. And you can also code physical simulations with the physics engine as well. And that's through just a simple switch by turning on the physics of an object and then giving it those abilities depending on what you want to be able to do within your CoSpaces project. So let me share a couple of ways that I've used CoSpaces with students at my school. So one of the very first projects I did was with an English grade 8 class, and they're a really heavy writing class. They have to write a lot of essays. But the teacher in that class felt like they needed to kind of step away from that. It was becoming too much. Okay? So they still had to write the essay, but we wanted to take that a step further. So they finished reading To Kill a Mockingbird, and the project at the end of this particular book was the students were tasked with creating an original character and then inserting that character into a significant scene from CoSpaces. And then the writing aspect of this was they had to write an essay to share how they think their original character might impact the plot of the story and also impact the important characters in the story. Right, so they had to write an essay. Writing was still involved because that was one of the important pieces of the class. But after they finished that, we wanted them to be able to express that visually. What did that look like to them with their own imagination and creativity? So we used CoSpaces to have the students create those scenes that they chose and insert their original character into that scene and then include how that might impact the dialogue that those characters would have and how that might change the rest of the story. And once they were done creating, they shared those scenes amongst their peers in their class, and they were able to explore each other's CoSpaces projects virtually using a VR headset or a laptop computer. So again, if you're in this presentation later, you can click on that. I've got that whole project documented online, the rubrics and the guides that I've used to help guide that project. Oh, here's one example from a student from that class. Just a brief video of what she created. So this is Miss Maud's house, and for some reason, the character she created caused the house to catch on fire. And that character is hiding behind the house there as you roll around it. But what I love about CoSpaces here is that the students aren't given every single object that's imaginable. They had to be very creative in how they would use those objects. So if you look carefully at the fire, there is no fire object in CoSpaces, but there are lightning bolts. And so she didn't use the lightning bolt as a lightning bolt, she used it with a different purpose in mind. So she changed the colors and changed the sizes of the lightning bolts to make it look more like fire. So she had to, use a lot of creativity and imagination there. The fire truck over there that's not a complete fire truck. It's a truck that's available to them. And then she had to attach some cylinders and tubes on the top to create a fire hose, as well as that blue streamer. That's actually a blue party streamer, but she rotated it sideways and turned it into water. Right? So those weren't obvious objects to them. They had to be creative in how they would use those things. I mislabeled this slide, so I'll go on. Another favorite of mine was with grade 5. They were researching solar systems. They were assigned a planet. They had to conduct the usual research involved in learning about a planet. And they would do a slideshow presentation in the end. So they gathered their research in that slideshow, but we wanted them to be able to express what they learned in a visual way. So they were tasked with creating the solar system in CoSpaces. Okay? We didn't give them too many guidelines. They had to include the sun, the Earth, and then their planet that they were researching within CoSpaces, because they had to share information about size comparison and proximity to the sun and the Earth and things like that. That information had to be expressed through their project. They had a lot of fun with it. They had to use creativity in how they use the objects, because you're given a basic sphere in CoSpaces, and you can only make that sphere one color, right? So if you have a planet like Earth is not one solid color. So how do you incorporate the land that's green and brown and white? So they had to use a combination of different objects. So most students would take the rock object and layer it inside the Earth and change it and make it green so that it would look like land. So they had to use a combination of things. This is one of my favorite examples of why I love CoSpaces, because one of the students in the class, she was a struggling reader. She was reading at a first or second grade level. So she had a lot of issues in class. And when we introduced them to CoSpaces, she absolutely loved it. So they were only tasked with working on the project in school, but she ended up going home that night and continuing to work on it for homework, even though it wasn't assigned as homework. She wanted to continue working on it. And where the rest of her class just did the sun, the Earth, and the planet, she created an entire solar system museum in the span of one night. And she created the entire solar system, all of the planets and the moons and the sun. She had a teacher teaching a class of students off in one corner of the solar system, and she had a bunch of objects that would share some of the research that she learned about her planet. And she even went beyond that and taught herself a little bit of the coding tools so she could make a rocket shoot up into outer space. And so to me, it demonstrated the power of the tool. It allowed her the ability to express her creativity and share what she learned in a completely different way that allowed her to accomplish that task. And it was just really, really cool to see that happen. When that wasn't the task presented to them, she went way above and beyond. I've also done another science in grade 3. We learn about seed dispersal in their science curriculum in grade 3, and so They in CoSpaces they created a scene that would showcase that type of seed dispersal, how the seeds were transported to that location. So whether it was eaten by a bird or transported on a seed, or lots of different ways. But they had to showcase that type of seed dispersal, but not just have a seed stuck to a bird. They had to create an entire environment where you might find that in the real world, right? So they had to apply what they know, what they learned, to the real world around them, creating a CoSpaces scene that would show that. Oh, that's not loading. Okay, we'll skip that. There's a video in there of one of the students talking through what she's creating in her scene, if you want to check that out later. So of course, there's lots of other use cases for CoSpaces. Some great examples of teachers creating and students creating vocabulary museums. So they search for pictures or upload images into a CoSpaces environment where they've applied walls. And then as they learn new vocabulary words, they can go in and add more of that to their vocabulary museum, and then they're able to virtually walk around it and explore those vocabulary and their terms and examples. As in my To Kill a Mockingbird example, it's great for English and lit classes. It's a great option for storytelling. If kids are writing their own stories, it's a great way for them to show their stories visually. Some great examples of creating dioramas, 3D models, as you see there. And then it's a great opportunity to expose kids to computer science and programming as well. All right, so that's all I got for you. Hopefully you learned a little bit about CoSpaces. If you want to connect with me, I've got lots of my projects documented online, as I mentioned earlier. If you're interested in trying out CoSpaces for free, you can use this promo code. It'll give you 30 days of the pro license with 100 student seats. It's a great opportunity to give it a try it out for your first project of the school year, and then see if it's something you want to continue using. Thank you very much, guys. I appreciate you sticking with me towards the end of this day at ISTE. Do you guys have any questions about CoSpaces? Anything you're wondering about? No? Okay, that's fine. Well, thank you for joining me. I really appreciate it. You guys have a great day. Yeah, so the question is it easy to go from computer creating to the virtual reality experience? Yeah, so when you create on the computer, you have to log into your account, right? And it's all through the web, right? So everything's saved to the cloud, and whatever you create is attached to your account. So you just move yourself from your computer to your mobile device, and on the mobile device is a CoSpaces Edu app, and you sign into that app with your account, and all of your projects are accessible on that device now. And then you just open up that particular project, and you can switch it over to VR mode. Yeah. Yes, you can. I can't demo it here, but if you visit one of our tables where CoSpaces is building in a feature that allow your students to create their own content for the Merge Cube. Right, so like if you imagine, like we have an example over there where I have my kids build a solar system in CoSpaces, and you can explore it and fly through it virtually. But what you can do with the Merge Cube is now take that solar system, attach it to a Merge Cube, and now they can hold their own solar system in the palm of their hand, and then they're able to manipulate it and move it around and explore it with the Merge Cube. It's really cool. So it's going to be probably the easiest way for students to create their own content for the Merge Cube, which will be out soon.
So is that just another option then? So like when it's applied to the headset or whatever, you just apply it to the Merge Cube?
Yes, yeah. So it'll become another option on your mobile device to view it on a Merge Cube, or to view it in VR, or we also rolled out a new augmented reality feature as well. So there will be a couple of options in the app that will allow you to view it. Yeah. Thank you. You guys have a good day.